Hi, everybody. Welcome back inside the Talking Elite Fitness studios as week one of semifinals is officially done. We have 13 men, 12 women, and 11 teams that have earned their way to Madison. I'm Tommy Marquez inside the studio, and I'm joined now by two of the most handsome gentlemen east of the Mississippi right now, Sean Woodland and Brian Fenn, joining us from Orlando. Guys, week one is done. Just real quick, a couple of thoughts that jump into your mind while it's still fresh.
I'll go ahead and start. I was really eager to see how the new excitement of spots being available outside of the top 10 was going to affect the final tests and what that drama was going to look like. And I don't think anyone was disappointed with how things played out today. I mean, there was plenty of excitement, especially on the women's side, but also on the men's side as well, going into that final test. And the fact that they kept those athletes out there, I think added a little extra something to the experience of watching that. And I wanted to see how it played out, and I was really happy with it. I can't wait to see this repeat itself over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just the overall caliber and quality of athlete out here in North America East. I had a feeling that on the teams and women's side, this was going to be probably the most competitive region in terms of potential for top 10 finishes at the games. But some of the men's performances here are making me think there's a chance that we'll see 5 teams, 5 women, and 5 men from North America East finish inside the top 10 at the games in a couple months. And, I think that there were some times on specific tests set this weekend that might stand the test of time over the next 2 weeks.
We'll certainly have to wait and see if those times hold up. But we had 2 tests in store for today. Individuals were rolling solo, and starting with the women's division, test number 6. To start it out, we had some contenders, obviously, from the earlier heat. And early on, it was Annika Greer. Looked like it was going to be a costly no rep. It looked like a good rep on screen. Thankfully, it was able to get resolved. She was able to continue on, finish strong in that. Another top 3 finish put her right on the bubble heading into the final event. But there were another heat of women ready to go as Danielle Brandon set the top time from the final heat. No problem with the new seated, quote-unquote, legless rope climbs. And, of course, once she got to the handstand walk, you knew she was going to be able to handle that. Danielle Brandon was towards the top of the leaderboard all weekend long, battling it out with Emma Carey. And her second event win of the weekend certainly set her up for a nice finish overall once all things were said and done. But then the drama came down to test number 7. Annika Greer, again, in heat number 5, trying to hold on to one of those spots, makes a mistake, rolls her sandbag across the line, has to go back. That opened the door for Brooke Wells trying to make a furious comeback, setting the top time in heat number 5, and she would have to stand and watch as Emma Carey and Danielle Brandon would battle it out. Emma putting up the top time overall, sealing the overall win for her. And then it was a flurry of finishes. Alexis Raptis, Amanda Barnhart, Paige Powers. We all had to wait and see how these were going to affect the leaderboard overall. Carolyn Stanley, one of those athletes on the bubble. Fisa Goffi struggled in this outside of the top 30. Wasn't sure how it was going to shake out, but in the end, Paige Semenza gets the final spot by just 3 points over Annika Greer. Another close call for Annika Greer when it comes to qualifying for the CrossFit Games. And Brian, we saw a little bit of that chaos just now in the highlight. I think it's safe to say that event 7 or test 7 for the women stole the show, especially with how that bubble race shook out.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a tale of 2 tapes on the women's side. There was a 100-point gap from 6th to 7th going into that final, and those top 6 women were phenomenal all weekend. But once all the dust settled, there was only 20 points from Fisa Goffi in 8th, all the way down to Carolyn Prevost in 15th. And that means half those women are in and half of those women are out. So all 8 of those women are basically sweating it there at the end. Huge congratulations to Fee, Shelby Neal, and Caroline Stanley. Both have a little bit of a cool story that I think we'll be able to flesh out over the next couple months. And then Paige Semenza, real veteran performance this weekend, just kind of stayed to her tried and true methods, and once again heading back to the CrossFit Games.
And we have a host of new qualifiers, 3 rookies in the top 12. Brooke Wells' comeback comes up a little bit short, Sean, but when you look at all of the qualifiers, is there maybe a name that jumps out to you?
Yeah, well, Brian mentioned her, and it's Fisa Goffi. You look at what she did at the beginning of this competition. She had a 12th, a 6th, and an 8th, and that set her up very well. And I think the most impressive result wasn't one of those 3. It was the fact that she took 20th in test 4. She had a 185-pound snatch. Good enough for 20th place. Now, usually for Fisa Goffi, that is a disaster event. Had she maybe finished 30th or lower, we might not be talking about her going to the CrossFit Games, but the fact that she was able to finish in the top third in that test, I think speaks to the progress that she has made as an athlete and is probably a big reason why she wound up on the right side of the cut line this year.
And congratulations to Fee. It's been 4 years since she first qualified in 2019. Crazy to think that it's already been that long, but finally getting to go back in 2023. And congrats to all of the qualifiers on the women's side, 11 in total. Moving over to the men's side now, and 12 spots up for grabs. And it all started with Noah Olson on the quest for 10. You know, Noah's known for coming out hot, and early on from the standpoint of getting to these high-skill gymnastics, everyone's kind of holding their breath. They're waiting for that potential blow-up moment, but it never came. Noah Olson, from the outset, going toe-to-toe with Will Moore the entire way through test number 6. You can see him with a big smile on his face. He knows what's up. Gets an event win, the only athlete to go under 10 minutes in that test. A strong performance from Noah, and it actually clinched a top qualifying spot for him going into the finale. On the bubble, though, James Sprague, a familiar presence last year, on the wrong side of history in an epic comeback from Will Morad. He was surrounded by Austin Hatfield, Spencer Panchik, the two athletes trying to chase him on the leaderboard. Hatfield gets a costly no rep, leaving early, opens the door for both Sprague and Panchik, and you can see when he crosses the finish line, sealing the deal for him in a trip to Madison, much to the delight of the raucous crowd. There was still one more heat to go, though, and early on, Roman Krennikov jumped out to the lead, but Dallin Pepper started to reel him in, and by the time we got to the final round of the sandbags, it was Pepper and Hopper, the two athletes at the forefront. Dallin Pepper, didn't get to talk about him a bunch as an event winner, but finally seals the deal for one to close things strong, move him up into the top 5 when the weekend's all said and done. And looking at some of these stories across on the men's side, we saw some epic finishes, some tremendous performances across the board. But Sean, I think it was nice to maybe see James Sprague on the other side of the cut line this year compared to last year.
Chase and I were talking about this, about how, you know, when you get the announcements of who's going to the games, you have these two conflicting emotions, and you're super happy for the athlete who made it, and you feel terrible for the athlete who didn't. And last year it was heartbreaking to watch James Sprague, you know, have to lose a spot that looked like was pretty well locked up because of that amazing comeback that Will Morad was able to make. And you're wondering, like, is that in James' head going into that final test? And he was towards the front. He got some help from Austin Hatfield, of course, who jumped off the pull-up bar early with one rep remaining. Sprague may have been able to beat him across the finish line regardless, but a great performance from James. Really looking forward to seeing the energy that he's going to bring to the 2023 Noble CrossFit Games. Super happy for him, and yeah, just it was great. It was a great scene with him and his dad too at the end there, and I know that got me and Chase a little misty when we heard him thank his father.
Yeah, I think the energy that he brought and his cheering section brought is certainly something we can look forward to once we get things over to Madison. But at the top of the leaderboard, Brian, I think it's tough to not be impressed with what we saw from Adler at the top of the leaderboard, even coming in as one of the favorites.
Absolutely. I mean, Jeff Adler at this point has built a really impressive resume, just continuously moving up throughout the men's division, having solid performance after solid performance. And he's in this rare caliber of athlete now that seems to have consistent performances regardless of the stage. Off-season competitions, online competitions, semifinals, games. He's a 2-time back-to-back semifinal champion now, and he's a legitimate podium threat amongst a very competitive men's field this year in Madison.
It's crazy to think that the knock on Jeff a couple of years ago might have been that he's better in online competition, and now he's just starting to rack up top performance after top performance when we get things in person in a live competition. Again, congrats to all of the 12 qualifiers out of the North America East men's division. Before we let you guys go, kind of some closing thoughts. Brian, we'll start with you. Maybe one thing left on the table you still want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, this is week 1 of a 3-week semifinal. We've had 2, we have 5 more to go, and I think whether you're an athlete, a coach, a fan, or just anyone who's following along, you got to realize that this is a little different format. You know, we saw people in both the men's and women's division in Spencer Panchik and Sydney Wells have finishes outside the top 50 in a 60-person field and still battle their way into a qualifying position. So kind of this mindset from years past where one bad finish can just bankrupt your entire chance. That's no longer the case. You can afford to have a bad finish if you have some good finishes to offset that. And in both those athletes' cases, that happened. And I think that we'll see something similar as the rest of the weeks continue to unfold.
Yeah, and for me, and to piggyback off what Brian just said, I was super impressed with the consistency of mainly the guys on the podium. Jeff Adler and Dallin Pepper, they never had finishes outside of the top 10. And if you look at the leaderboard, that was a rarity. And then you could throw Jason Hopper in there because he was close. He never finished lower than 12th. And I think if you have that kind of consistency in these tests with so many people who can throw a wrench into things, I can't remember the last time that we saw winning scores in semifinal tests come from heat 2 and heat 3, and we had that happen here. So if you're able to exhibit that kind of consistency in this extended field, I think that makes you someone who you really need to pay attention to when we get to Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, especially with the twists and turns that we've seen from Boz's programming. It certainly doesn't hurt to be able to consistently perform at a high level across the board. Guys, thanks so much. I know it's the end of the competition. People are probably tearing down. Rogue's probably going with the impact driver in the background as well. People trying to get some pizza and beer. But thank you for taking the time. Thanks for checking in all weekend. Great coverage as always, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, man.
North America East wasn't the only semifinal handing out tickets to the games this weekend. Over in Africa, the Rebel Renegade Games wrapped up their weekend of competition. And for the teams, it was FBDV Mayhem Africa winning 3 of the 6 events to cruise their way to a first-place finish and earn their way to Madison. Over in the women's division, Michelle Basnet won 3 of the final 4 events, including both of them on Sunday. She was a win-in-your-in scenario against Mariska Smith in the finale. She's going back to the games after qualifying in 2021. And then on the men's side, the model of consistency, Jason Smith, every event 9th place or better. And all the other men, mind you, had 2+ finishes outside of the top 10. Crazy to think that we first saw Jason Smith way back in 2010 at the Africa Regional when he came up just 1 spot shy of qualifying. Now, week 1 of semifinals may be all said and done, but we actually have another full slate of competitions coming your way in week number 2, starting with North America West. Action kicks off down at Pasadena on Thursday, May 25th. And then both the Torium Pro and Copa Sur in South America, they get started the following day on Friday, May 26th, with all 3 semifinals wrapping up on Sunday, the 28th. Congratulations again to all the qualifiers, especially those rookies, finally earning their way to Madison for a first trip to the big show. And be sure to check back in for another show from us coming your way tomorrow as we'll recap some of our favorite and top moments throughout the weekend of competition. That's going to do it for us here in studio. For Brian Friend, Sean Woodland, Lauren Khalil, I'm Tommy Marquez. Thanks so much for watching all weekend long, and we'll see you guys next time.